No Matt Ryan today, unfortunately. He didn't want to talk about, Kyle, his heir apparent to the Atlanta Falcons QB throne, apparently. He was scared. He was scared to talk Michael Penix and how good he looked.
He was up late. He was worried. He was watching that game. He was like, this young buck can just sling it, man. There's nothing that this guy, Michael Penix Jr., can't do. That was so much fun to watch. That was a great segue, great announcement leading into a segue into our opening conversation, which is obviously that Falcons Commanders Sunday Night Football recap. And what a treat we were in for last night, getting to watch those two young quarterbacks go. And time again, we've been amazed at what Jayden Daniels has been able to do. And in Michael Penix's coming out party on a national stage, international stage, in the nation's capital last night, it was so much fun to watch those two guys go toe-to-toe. The crowd noise, the moment, the situational football, it was never too big for Michael Penix Jr. I'm curious as to what you thought, because you said after last week, the stat line wasn't indicative of how well Michael Penix Jr. played. What did you see from your guy?
Yeah, this week, I think the stat line was indicative, but it wasn't quite indicative of how mature he looked, right? It was not a fake 223 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, goes 19 of 35. The completion percentage was right on the money. Like, he missed some throws, some plays that were to be made on that football field. Jayden Daniels outplayed him. Like, Jayden Daniels, throw for throw, was the better quarterback in that game. Not a surprise. He's been so nasty. We'll get to him here in just a second, and his rookie campaign and how much of an outlier it is in the rest of NFL history. But Penix, the things you see from him already in terms of anticipation, in terms of pocket presence, in terms of his ability to handle pressure. I love that 23 pressure dropbacks this season. He's taken only 3 sacks. Like, the guy has not let that get to him when this Falcons offensive line is not like the greatest, right? They are not a top tier line that's given him all day to throw. So he has to play a quicker brand of football that a lot of rookies are accustomed to. But you're already seeing him handle all that. And then the clutch play at the end, the touchdown pass to Kyle Pitts on a 4th down. That's one, when the ball had to be thrown. If he waits any longer, the window is no longer there. And then 2, where the ball had to be thrown. So the plays that you saw him make down the stretch, you just feel really good about where he is on his developmental curve. There's obviously things that need to be fixed. And the reason I was worried about him even projecting from Washington to the NFL was that he did miss a lot of throws on tape. He is not the most accurate guy, but I do think that will improve as he gets more comfortable. But the fact that he's already playing this comfortable this early on, if you're a Falcons fan, you got to be really, really excited about where this future of this franchise is going.
You got to be super happy. And then you have to kind of look in the rearview mirror a bit and be like, how much meat do we leave on the bone there in the middle part of the season when things were not right with Kirk Cousins? Should we have pulled the emergency parachute earlier? Obviously there is a future for the Atlanta Falcons team, but this offense looks completely different with this guy, Michael Penix, in there at quarterback. And you and I were talking about it this morning. I called you. I was like, what'd you think about the game? We talked about Penix a little bit. And I said, you know what? Some of those missed throws, I just think that the receivers aren't used to a guy who can get it out there in that part of the field. And they had to see it to believe it. And last night was kind of the hello world moment for Michael Penix Jr. and that receiving core on those deep balls. He's going to give you opportunities. If anything, he'll put it further than it needs to be, which I think is a much better place to be than the underthrow. I know there's DPI and that kind of thing that happens week in, week out. But, a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, we complained about the fact that he's not giving his guys runway with nobody behind him. Michael Penix is going to do that for these receivers. And we saw last night that there's a number of guys who can go make big plays. I think it was 2 4th downs of plus 11 yards there that they had to convert at the end of the football game. Just a tremendous ability to put the blinders on and go make it happen. One thing that stood out to me about Michael Penix Jr. was his pocket presence, his pocket mobility without getting out of his throwing stance. The guy is like, we used to watch Brady, a guy who couldn't run at all, maneuver the pocket like water. You know what I mean? The guy could just find the path of least resistance. And there were a few times when the sky was falling and the pocket was collapsing around him. When he maintained poise, he was able to stay in that throwing demeanor and get that football down the field. I thought it was so impressive last night.
Really was. Unfortunately, though, like you mentioned, you got to have a little regret saying, if we would put this guy in during that stretch when Kirk Cousins was really in the tank, when they were playing, the Broncos, the Chargers, those playoff teams that they just could not move the ball against offensively, we might be talking a team that had already wrapped up the NFC South instead of a team that's now looking up at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Unfortunately, looks like they will be missing the playoffs when it's all said and done now. But the team that's not on the other side of the ball there, Washington Commanders, they clinch a playoff berth for the first time since 2020. And that 2021 felt a little different because that was when they went 7-9, right? Still won the division. That was when they were below 500, still won the NFC East. This feels like the start of something. That year, 2020, felt like, man, we almost didn't want to back in. We almost wanted the draft pick that we would have gotten otherwise. This feels like the start of what could be or should be a team that is going to be running, not only, could be in contention for the NFC East, but for Super Bowls here sooner rather than later.
And I think it's important to point this out. And you and I talk about culture a lot, and we talk about roster building a lot. And often it's not just getting the right guys with the right skills, but it's the right guys with a winning mindset or guys who have come from winning teams. And throughout the course of the year, I've seen guys like Andrew Wiley and Nick Allegretti step up for this team. Obviously, Tyler Biadasz went down yesterday. That was tough to see. But they've got guys in that building who have been on winning teams and been with winning programs. And when I look at the team that I root for every week, it's the Chicago Bears. I see a lot of good players that haven't had a lot of success prior to being there. And you expect them to just through osmosis or something to be able to create a winning culture. Culture comes from learned experiences and the belief that you have in something that you've done before. And last night, Biadasz goes down, Nick Allegretti, the left guard, as it was beautifully noted by the broadcast booth. Nick Allegretti was calling the mics. He was calling the plays. He was setting protections. He was making checks. Those are the type of guys you can rely on and build something special with. And while they may not be the all pros, they know how to win football games. They've done it for a long time. So credit to Dan Quinn and that organization for bringing the right guys in to help their young quarterback. And then, a wily, salty vet like Zach Ertz. He was that drop at the beginning of the game. First off, fantastic throw from Jayden Daniels at the high point, back of the end zone to Zach Ertz. Zach just couldn't bring it in. Well, he made him pay. He had 2 more. He should have had 3 in that football game. They've done a masterful job in Washington. And to your point, we're going to be talking about this for a very long time because Jayden ain't going nowhere.
I love you bringing up the culture there because it's so evident. That's like the biggest thing when you watch this Washington team is just the belief, the unflappability. And it starts not only, with what you mentioned, those guys coming in and your head coach who's been to a Super Bowl, but Jayden Daniels has a demeanor that is just different for a rookie. The fact that they're trusting him to still throw the ball when you're in, scoring range the way they were in overtime, whereas basically they probably still could have kicked a field goal there and won the game, but you're still trusting him in those situations to make the right decision. And that, back-to-back weeks, they're down 10 points. Both those weeks leads them back for wins when you're on, the doorstep of a playoff berth. I do just think that what we're seeing from him, his ability as a dual threat, 127 rushing yards in this game, just broke Robert Griffin's rookie rushing record of 815 yards. It's just, if you're a Commanders fan, even going back to RG3 and what he looked like as a rookie, this is a different animal. RG3 won Rookie of the Year. Jayden Daniels is about to win Rookie of the Year. But this is not, there's no shoe to drop here like there was with RG3. There is only actually more room for growth, in my opinion, watching Jayden Daniels on tape and watching the talent around him. The more pieces they put, the more this offense can and should be, if not the best, one of the top 3 in the NFL for the next couple of years.
There's a few things I want to ask you about. Number one, is this the best rookie season of all time by a quarterback?
That's tough. I just, in terms of like pure value, I think it almost has to be. Now, I don't know way back in the day how they looked. I've only obviously been doing let's talk the recent memory here, because really I'm asking about CJ Stroud's rookie campaign
or Jayden Daniels' rookie campaign, because both have lit the world on fire in different ways. And Jayden being so versatile and CJ being so poised and just five-star general like his rookie year, they were both so impressive. But you're a guy who's in the weeds more than I am. I'm interested on your take.
I do think, I think it is, in my opinion. I think it's more impressive than, so Andrew Luck, obviously, was probably just in terms of what he had to deal with, no talent around him, carrying a team to the playoffs. I think it's a little bit just in terms of his ability to dual threat, does everything for that offense. It's that running game. It opens up the passing game. It's so important to that offense that I do think even, from a value perspective, he's a little bit more than even Andrew Luck was as a rookie. But we're obviously comparing little apples to oranges. He was a 5-year starter in college. And if you are fans of the NFL game, I think you love the way the college game is going with NIL money and with the transfer portal, Daniels obviously being one of the beneficiaries of it, is that these guys now get seasoning. They get Daniels a 5-year starter, Bo Nix a 5-year starter. Michael Penix spent 6 years in college before he got to the NFL. They're hitting the NFL, and they're like year 2, year 3 players that we were seeing at the quarterback position a decade ago, because everyone at the quarterback position up until NIL money the advice was get there as soon as possible, get to the second contract. That's all that matters. Now it's like, if you can be making a couple $1 million a year in college, hold that as long as you can, develop as much as you can at the place you're supposed to be, against your peers before your head starts spinning at the NFL level. So now these guys who are 5-year starters, 4-year starters, who get the seasoning, they get to the NFL and they look, like Michael Penix Jr. and Jayden Daniels look. They look like they're ready. And so as an NFL fan, I'm very, excited about the future of the quarterback position, because I think we're going to finally see guys get developed at the collegiate level more so than ever.